My sister locked my 6-year-old asthmatic son in her car on a scorching afternoon because he ate a display chocolate. She called it tough love, but she didn't know my dashcam was recording. I didn't just file a report, I launched a legal war. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The call that shattered my life didn't come from the police, or a hospital, or even a concerned neighbor. It came from my son, Ian. It was 2:14 p.m. on a Tuesday. I remember the time exactly because I was staring at the clock on my computer screen, desperate for the workday to end. I was sitting at my desk in the law firm where I've worked as a senior paralegal for 6 years, buried under a mountain of discovery documents for a high-profile divorce case. My head was pounding, a rhythmic, dull throb behind my eyes that had started 3 days ago and refused to leave. I was fighting off a summer flu, running on Sudafed and willpower, trying to keep my focus sharp for my boss, Rachel. My phone buzzed against the mahogany veneer of the desk. When I saw the caller ID, my stomach dropped. It wasn't a number. It was a FaceTime request from Ian's iPad. Ian is 6. He knows he isn't supposed to call me during work hours unless it's an absolute emergency. He was supposed to be at my sister Carla's house for the afternoon while his school was closed for a teacher development day. I swiped the green button, my heart already hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. "Ian, honey, is everything okay?" I whispered, conscious of the quiet office around me. The image that filled my screen made the blood drain from my face. Ian wasn't inside Carla's immaculate, gray-toned living room. He was huddled in the backseat of a car. His face was a mask of sweat, his hair plastered to his forehead in wet, dark streaks. But it was the sound that terrified me most, the high-pitched, wheezing gasp of him struggling to pull air into his lungs. "Mommy," he wheezed, the word barely a ghost of a sound. I can't breathe good, it's hot." Panic, cold and electric, shot through my veins. I stood up so fast my chair flew back and hit the filing cabinet with a loud crash. "Ian, where are you? Where is Auntie Carla?" She put me in the car," he gasped, tears cutting clean tracks through the grime on his flushed cheeks. "She said, 'Time out, the doors won't open. Mommy, I need my puffer.'" My vision tunneled. Ian has severe asthma. Heat and stress are his 2 biggest triggers. If he was locked in a car without his inhaler in the middle of a July afternoon. "I'm coming, Ian. I'm coming right now," I shouted, not caring who heard me. "Try to stay calm, baby. Mommy is flying there." I didn't even log off my computer. I grabbed my purse and sprinted past the reception desk. Rachel, who had stepped out of her office at the sound of the crash, called out my name, but I was already pushing through the glass doors. "Emergency, I have to go," I yelled back, my voice cracking. The drive to Carla's house usually takes 20 minutes. I made it in 11. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely grip the steering wheel. Every red light felt like a personal assault. Every slow driver felt like an enemy combatant. My mind was racing through worst-case scenarios, images of my little boy passing out, his lungs seizing up, all while my sister sat inside her air-conditioned fortress. When I screeched into Carla's driveway, the scene I found was worse than I had imagined. My car, which I had lent Carla that morning because hers was in the shop, was parked in the direct sunlight. The windows were rolled up tight. And there, sitting on the front porch in a wicker chair, sipping an iced latte and scrolling on her phone, was Carla. She looked up as I slammed my door and ran toward the car, my heels clicking frantically on the pavement. She didn't look concerned. She looked annoyed. "Jennifer, what are you doing here?" she called out, lowering her sunglasses. "I told Ian not to bother you." I didn't answer her. I reached the rear door of my sedan and yanked the handle. Locked. "Unlock it," I screamed, pounding on the glass. Inside, Ian was slumped against the door, his eyes half-lidded, his chest heaving in shallow, rapid jerks. Carla sighed, a long, exaggerated sound of suffering, and slowly stood up. She fished the keys out of her pocket, taking her sweet time walking down the porch steps. "You are so dramatic. He's only been in there for 10 minutes. It's a timeout, Jen. He needs to learn." "Unlock the damn door, Carla," I shrieked, the primal rage in my voice making her flinch. She pressed the button, the locks clicked. I ripped the door open. A wave of heat hit me in the face. It must have been 100 degrees in there. I unbuckled Ian and pulled his limp, sweaty body into my arms. He was burning up. I immediately reached into his pocket for his emergency inhaler, but it wasn't there. "Where is it?" I yelled, looking at Carla, who was now standing with her arms crossed, looking down her nose at us. "Where is his inhaler?" "I took it," she said calmly. "He was playing with it, clicking it open and shut. It was annoying. It's on the kitchen counter." I looked at my son, gasping for air in my arms, and then at my sister, whose face held zero remorse, only judgment. At that moment, the sister I thought I knew vanished, replaced by a monster. The betrayal was worse than the diagnosis itself. The next hour was a blur of medical intervention and terror, followed by a cold, simmering rage that settled deep in my bones. I didn't wait for Carla to get the inhaler. I had a spare in my purse, I always do. I shook the canister with trembling hands and pressed it to Ian's lips. "Breathe, baby. Big breath for mommy." He took a ragged inhale, then coughed, a wet, hacking sound that rattled in his small chest. We sat there on the driveway, the hot asphalt burning my legs as I rocked him back and forth. It took 3 puffs and 10 terrifying minutes before his breathing slowed to a manageable rhythm. His skin was still clammy, and he was lethargic, clearly suffering from heat exhaustion. "You are lucky," I hissed, not looking up at Carla. "You are so lucky he's breathing." Carla let out a scoff. "Oh, please, it's 80 degrees out, Jennifer, not 100. I cracked the window a tiny bit. He was fine. He worked himself up into a panic because he knew you'd come running if he cried wolf." I slowly stood up, lifting Ian into my arms. He's big for a 6-year-old, but in that moment, the adrenaline gave me the strength to carry him as if he were an infant. I walked past her, toward her front door. "Where are you going?" she demanded, following me. "I'm getting his things, and then I'm leaving." Inside, the house was frigid. The air conditioning was blasting, a stark, cruel contrast to the oven she had locked my son in. I walked into the kitchen, grabbed Ian's backpack and the inhaler she had confiscated, and turned to leave. Carla blocked the hallway. She was a beautiful woman, tall, blonde, always perfectly put together in designer athleisure, where that cost more than my rent. But right now, her face was twisted in an ugly sneer. "You're not going to even ask what he did?" she asked, her voice shrill. "You're just going to coddle him like you always do? That's why he's so spoiled, Jennifer. You never discipline him." I stared at her, feeling a vain throb in my temple. "He's 6, Carla. He has asthma. You locked him in a car. That isn't discipline, that's abuse." "He ate the artisan chocolate bar Matthew brought back from Switzerland," she shouted, throwing her hands up. "The one on the display stand? I told him specifically not to touch it. He looked right at me and took a bite. He needed to learn that actions have consequences. A timeout in the car gives him time to think without distractions." "A chocolate bar," I repeated, my voice dangerously quiet. "You endangered his life over a chocolate bar." "It was $70, she shrieked. "And it's the principle. You dump him on me whenever you have work, and I'm expected to just let him destroy my house? I don't think so. My house, my rules." "I didn't dump him on you," I said, my voice steady despite the shaking of my hands. "You offered. You begged to have him over because you said you were lonely with Matthew gone." She rolled her eyes. "Whatever, take him, but don't expect me to babysit next time you're drowning in paperwork. And frankly, you owe Matthew for the chocolate." I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized that she truly believed she was the victim here. She felt inconvenienced by my son's medical emergency, annoyed by the loss of a confection, and completely justified in her torture of a child. "Get out of my way," I said. She stepped aside, smirking. "Go ahead, run away. You'll be back calling me when you need something. You always are." I walked out to my car, strapped Ian in, and blasted the AC. I drove straight to the urgent care clinic just to be safe. The doctor there confirmed Ian had suffered a mild asthma attack induced by heat stress and dehydration. He gave us a nebulizer treatment and documented everything. As I sat in that sterile white room, watching the mist curl around Ian's face, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Carla. "Carla, Matthew is really upset about the chocolate. Venmo me $70 and we'll call it even. Also, Ian got chocolate smudges on the backseat of your car. You should clean that before it sets." I stared at the screen, reading the words over and over. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't scared. She was emboldened. She thought this was just another family spat, another instance where Jennifer would get mad, Carla would gaslight her, and eventually, we de-sweep it under the rug because family is family. She thought it was her word against mine. She thought that because no one else was there, she could spin the narrative, tell Matthew and our parents that Ian was throwing a tantrum and she just put him in the car for 2 minutes to cool off. But she had forgotten one crucial thing. When I lent her my car that morning, I didn't tell her about the upgrade I'd installed last week. After a minor fender bender in the firm's parking lot, I had installed a high-end, 360-degree dashcam. It had an interior cabin view. It had audio recording. And it had a parking mode that triggered whenever there was motion inside the vehicle. It had been recording the entire time. To understand why Carla felt comfortable locking my son in a car, you have to understand the dynamic between us. It didn't start today. It started 30 years ago. Carla was the firstborn, the princess, the golden child. She was beautiful, charismatic, and demanding. I was 4 years younger, the quiet one, the studious one, the fixer. Our parents, God rest their souls, fed into it. If Carla broke a vase, I was told to clean it up so she wouldn't cut her fingers. If Carla failed a test, I was told to tutor her. I spent my entire life making myself smaller, so Carla could have more room to shine. When we grew up, nothing changed. I worked 2 jobs to put myself through college and paralegal certification. Carla dabbled in modeling, then event planning, then influencing, before she landed her biggest career move, marrying Matthew. Matthew is a nice enough guy on paper, a partner at a corporate finance firm, wealthy, successful, but he is also fundamentally weak when it comes to Carla. He travels 80% of the year, funding Carla's lifestyle to keep her happy and off his back. He writes the checks, and she rules the kingdom. He enables her worst impulses because it's easier than fighting her. When my husband left me 3 years ago, leaving me as a single mom to a toddler with health issues, Carla didn't offer help. She offered criticism. "Maybe if you dressed better, he wouldn't have strayed," she'd said at Thanksgiving. "Maybe if you weren't so obsessed with that boring job." Yet I still tried. I still wanted a relationship with my sister. I wanted Ian to have cousins, even though Carla and Matthew chose not to have children because Carla didn't want to ruin her body. So, whenever she offered to watch Ian, I took it as an olive branch. I desperately wanted to believe she loved him. But as I sat in my living room that night, watching the dashcam footage on my laptop, that illusion shattered forever. The video was crystal clear. Timestamp 1:58 p.m. Carla drags Ian by the arm out of the house. He is crying, holding his cheek. "Carla, I don't care. You are going to sit in here until you learn to respect other people's property." Ian, "Auntie, it's hot. I'm sorry. Please." Carla, "Stop whining. It's not that hot. Sit there and think about what you did." She slams the door. You can hear the locks engage. Timestamp 2:05 p.m. Ian is banging on the window. He is already sweating. He coughs, a dry, tight sound. "Auntie Carla, I need my puffer." Carla's voice muffled from outside. "Be quiet. You're not getting it until you calm down." Timestamp 2:12 p.m. Ian is slumped over. He is wheezing loudly. The sound is agonizing to listen to. He whispers, "Mommy," and reaches for the iPad he had snuck into his pocket. I paused the video, tears streaming down my face. My hands were clenched so tight my nails were digging into my palms. This wasn't negligence. This was malice. She heard him asking for his medicine, and she mocked him. My phone rang again. It was Matthew. I took a deep breath and answered, "Hello, Matthew." "Jennifer," his voice was tight, tired. He was likely in a hotel room in London or Tokyo. "Carla called me. She's hysterical. She says Ian destroyed a very expensive gift, and then you came over and screamed at her, threatening her in her own driveway." "Is that what she said?" I asked, my voice terrifyingly calm. "Look, Jen," Matthew sighed. "I know being a single mom is stressful, and I know Ian has issues, but Carla was just trying to help you out. She says she put him in the car for literally 2 minutes of timeout because he was throwing things, and you reacted like she was torturing him. She's really shaken up. She locked him in the car for 20 minutes, Matthew, in 80-degree heat, with the windows up." "Carla says the windows were down and the car was in the shade," Matthew countered immediately. "She says you're exaggerating. Honestly, Jen, I think you owe her an apology, and the $70 for the chocolate." "I'm not apologizing," I said. "Well, then we have a problem." Matthew's tone shifted, becoming the cold, corporate shark he was in the boardroom. "Carla is my wife. If you're going to disrespect her and accuse her of things, maybe you show. Didn't come around for a while, and don't expect any more financial help with Ian's school tuition. They helped pay for Ian's private school, the one with the specialized nursing staff for his asthma. It was the one string they held over me." "Are you threatening my son's education because your wife abused him?" I asked. "I'm setting boundaries, Jennifer. Fix this with Carla, or you're on your own." He hung up. I sat there in the silence of my small apartment. Ian was asleep in the next room, the rhythmic hum of the air purifier the only sound. They thought they had all the power. They had the money, the status, the perfect marriage. They thought I was just the poor, struggling little sister who would roll over and beg for forgiveness to keep the peace and the tuition checks. I looked back at the laptop screen. I looked at the file labeled Evidence Cam 1, MP4. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I knew by heart. "Rachel," I said when my boss answered. "Jen, it's 9 p.m. Is Ian okay?" "He will be," I said, "but I need to file a police report. And then I need to draft a civil complaint." "Against who?" Rachel asked, confused. "My sister," I said, "and I'm going to need the firm's best shark." "That would be me," Rachel said, her voice shifting instantly from friend to attorney. "Talk to me." "I'm going to sue her for everything she has," I said, "and I'm going to make sure she never is allowed near a child again." The morning after the incident, I didn't go to work. Instead, I walked into the 12th precinct with a flash drive in my pocket and a cold, hard knot in my stomach. I knew exactly what I was doing. As a paralegal, I've prepared dozens of clients for this moment. I've told them to be calm, to be factual, to leave emotion at the door. But standing there at the front desk, smelling the stale coffee and floor wax, I felt like a trembling child. I wasn't Jennifer, the paralegal. I was a mother whose cub had been cornered. I sat across from Detective Miller, a man with tired eyes and a skepticism that seemed etched into his wrinkles. He listened to my story with the detached efficiency of someone who hears domestic squabbles all day. "So, your sister put him in the car for a timeout," Miller summarized, his pen hovering over his notepad. "And you think it was excessive?" "It wasn't excessive, Detective. It was unlawful imprisonment and child endangerment," I said, my voice steadying as I slipped into my professional persona. "It was 82 degrees yesterday. The heat index was nearly 90. My son has documented severe asthma, and she denied him his rescue inhaler when he requested it." Miller sighed. "Look, Ms. Vance, unless there's proof of intent or injury, this is usually a CPS matter or a civil dispute. It's he said, she said." "It's not he said, she said," I said softly. I reached into my bag and placed the flash drive on the metal table. My car is equipped with a motion-activated interior dashcam with audio. I have 22 minutes of footage. You can hear her lock the doors. You can hear him begging for his inhaler. And you can hear her laughing as she walks away. Miller stopped writing. He looked at the drive, then up at me. His expression shifted from boredom to sharp alert. I'm going to need to see that. Watching him watch the video was one of the most validating and painful moments of my life. I saw his jaw tighten at the 12-minute mark, where Ian's wheezing became audible. I saw him wince when Ian banged on the glass. When the video finished, Miller didn't say a word for a long time. He just leaned back, exhaled slowly, and looked at me with a grim respect. "Okay," he said, "we're going to open a file. This is bad." Leaving the station, I felt a grim sense of satisfaction, but it was short-lived. By the time I got home, the retaliation had begun. I opened my email to find a notification from the bursar's office at Ian's private school. The subject line read, "Tuition payment failure." Matthew hadn't just threatened, he had acted. He had canceled the recurring payment for the semester, effective immediately. I had 48 hours to come up with $6,000 or Ian would be unenrolled. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the screen. My hands shook, but this time it wasn't from fear. It was from clarity. They were trying to squeeze me. They thought that by attacking my finances, they could force me to my knees. They thought I would call them, crying, begging for forgiveness, apologizing for overreacting. They had no idea who they were dealing with. I called Rachel. "They cut the tuition," I said. "I expected that," Rachel replied instantly. "I'm looking at Matthew's financials right now. Jennifer, for a guy who works in corporate finance, his liquidity is interesting." "What do you mean?" "I mean, he moves a lot of money around to support Carla's lifestyle," Rachel said, the sound of keyboard clicking in the background. "But here's the thing, we don't just want to defend, we want to attack. If we file for a temporary restraining order based on the police report, we can freeze the status quo. But we need more. We need to destroy her credibility completely before we walk into a courtroom. Who else has she hurt?" "No one," I said. "She doesn't have kids, she doesn't work." "Dig deeper," Rachel commanded. "She's a narcissist, Jen. Narcissists leave a trail of wreckage. Former friends, neighbors, employees." I thought about it. Carla had burned through friendships like kindling, but there was one name that stuck out. Sarah. They had been inseparable 3 years ago, right before I got divorced. Then, suddenly, Sarah vanished. Carla had claimed Sarah was jealous and crazy. "Find Sarah," Rachel said. "I'll handle the school. I'll write a letter of intent stating that tuition is part of an ongoing legal dispute regarding familial support. I can buy you 2 weeks. You use those 2 weeks to load the gun." 3 days later, the summons came. Not a legal one, a social one. My mother called me. "Jennifer, this has gone on long enough. Matthew and Carla are coming over for dinner on Sunday. You are coming too. We are going to sit down as a family and fix this." "Mom, she abused my son," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "Carla says it was a misunderstanding," my mother pleaded. "She's devastated, Jen. She's been crying for days. She says Ian was hitting her. She was scared. She put him in the car for safety. Just come over. Matthew has a proposal to help with the tuition again if we can just settle this." I felt a surge of bile. She says Ian was hitting her. Another lie, another layer of paint on her masterpiece of victimhood. "I'll be there," I said. I didn't tell my mother about the police report. I didn't tell her about the video. I walked into my childhood home on Sunday wearing a wire. Well, not a wire in the movie sense. I had my phone in my shirt pocket, recording app running, screen facing out, perfectly legal in our state's one-party consent laws. I needed her to lie. I needed her to hang herself. The atmosphere in the dining room was suffocating. Carla was sitting next to Mom, dabbing her dry eyes with a tissue. She looked frail, pale, a performance worthy of an Oscar. Matthew sat at the head of the table, looking like a disappointed CEO dealing with a rebellious intern. "Jen," Matthew started, sliding a document across the table. "We're family. We shouldn't be fighting. Carla is willing to forgive the outburst and the damage to the car. I'm willing to reinstate the tuition payments. All we need is for you to sign this." I looked down. It was a document titled Family Code of Conduct. It was essentially a gag order. It stipulated that I would not discuss private family discipline matters with third parties, that I would acknowledge Ian's behavioral issues, and that I would apologize to Carla in writing. "You want me to sign a contract to get my son's school paid for?" I asked, looking up at Matthew. "It's an agreement of mutual respect," Matthew said smoothly. "Tell me, Carla," I turned to my sister. "Why did you do it? Why the car?" Carla sniffled, clutching Mom's hand. "I told you, Jen. He went crazy. He was throwing things. He kicked me. I didn't know what to do. I put him in the car to contain him so I could call you, but you arrived so fast. I was terrified of him." "He's 6, I said, and he was breathless." "He was screaming," Carla insisted, her voice rising, gaining confidence. "He was screaming threats at me. He was perfectly fine. I saved him from hurting himself." "So the story is, Ian was violent, you were scared, and he was screaming the whole time?" I clarified. "Yes," Carla snapped. "God, why won't you believe me?" "And you never heard him ask for his inhaler?" "No, he never asked for it. If he had, I obviously would have given it to him. I'm not a monster, Jennifer." I nodded slowly. I had what I needed. She was on record, in front of witnesses, our parents, fabricating a narrative that was demonstrably false. "I can't sign this, Matthew," I said, pushing the paper back. "Then Ian is out of school," Matthew said, his face hardening. "And don't expect any invites for Christmas. You're choosing to be an outcast." I stood up. My legs felt heavy, but my spine was steel. "Actually, Matthew, I think you should save that money. You're going to need it for a criminal defense attorney." The room went dead silent. Carla stopped fake crying. "Excuse me," Matthew laughed, a nervous, dry sound. "I filed a police report on Tuesday," I said calmly. "Detective Miller at the 12th Precinct is handling the case. It's categorized as reckless endangerment and unlawful imprisonment." "You called the cops on your sister?" my father roared, slamming his hand on the table. "Jennifer, have you lost your mind?" "She lied to you, Dad," I said, looking him in the eye. "She just lied to all of you." Ian wasn't hitting her. He wasn't screaming. He was dying." "That's your word against mine," Carla shrieked, standing up, her face flushing an ugly, mottled red. "You have no proof. It's just your brat's word against mine." I walked to the door. I paused, my hand on the knob, and looked back at them. "Carla, you really should have checked if my car had a dashcam before you used it as a torture chamber." The color drained from her face so fast she looked like a corpse. Matthew froze. "We have video, Carla," I whispered. "And audio. The police have it. My lawyer has it. And now you have a felony investigation to deal with." I walked out of the house to the sound of Carla's scream. A genuine, terrified scream this time. The fallout was nuclear. By the time I got home, my phone was blowing up with texts from my parents, calling me a traitor, a destroyer of the family. They didn't want to see the video. They didn't want the truth. They wanted the peace they had always bought at my expense. But Carla didn't go quietly. Cornered animals bite, and Carla was a cobra. 2 days later, she went on the offensive. She posted a long, tearful video on Instagram and Facebook. She didn't name me directly, but she didn't have to. She spoke about the heartbreak of having a mentally unstable sibling who was weaponizing the legal system to extort money from her and her husband. She claimed she was being blackmailed. She painted herself as the martyr. The comments section was a cesspool. "Stay strong, Queen. Family can be so toxic, cut her off. Hope you got a restraining order against that psycho." It was humiliating. People in our small suburban town started looking at me differently in the grocery store. But the real blow came on Friday evening. A knock at the door. 2 women in business casual, holding clipboards. "Jennifer Vance?" one asked. "We're from Child Protective Services. We received an anonymous report regarding the welfare of your son, Ian." The report alleges that the home is unsanitary and that the child is medically neglected. Carla, she had called CPS on me. My blood ran cold, but my training kicked in. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. My apartment was spotless. My fridge was full. Ian's medication was organized in a clear plastic bin on the counter, labeled with dosages. I walked them through every room, calm, compliant, and professional. I showed them Ian's nebulizer. I showed them his clean bedroom. When they interviewed Ian, I sat in the kitchen, straining to hear. "Do you feel safe with Mommy?" "Yes." "Does Mommy ever lock you in places?" "No, only Auntie Carla did that." When the caseworkers came out, their demeanor had changed. They looked apologetic. "Ms. Vance, it appears this report was unfounded. Your home is exemplary." "My sister is currently under police investigation for locking my son in a car," I told them, handing them the contact card for Detective Miller. "I believe this call was retaliatory." The caseworker's eyes widened. She took the card. "We take false reporting very seriously, Ms. Vance. We'll be noting this." Carla had overplayed her hand, but I was done playing defense. I met Rachel at the office late that night. We were building the civil suit, intentional infliction of emotional distress, assault, battery. But Rachel had found something else. "You told me to find Sarah," Rachel said, sliding a dossier across the desk. "I found her, but I also found someone else. Do you remember the dog walking business Carla tried to start 5 years ago, before she met Matthew?" "Vaguely," I said. "She quit after a month because she said it was too much walking." "She didn't quit," Rachel said grimly. "She was fired and threatened with a lawsuit." She opened the file. Inside was a cease and desist letter from a wealthy family in the next town over. "She left a golden retriever tied up in a backyard in July without water for 4 hours while she went shopping," Rachel summarized. "The dog suffered heat stroke and nearly died. The family didn't press charges because Carla's dad, your dad, went over there and paid the vet bills and begged them not to ruin her life. I felt sick. My parents knew. They knew she was capable of this. They had covered it up then, and they were trying to cover it up now." "And here is Sarah," Rachel said, tapping another paper. "I reached out to her. She's willing to testify." "Testify to what?" "To the fact that Carla has done this to Ian before," Rachel said. "Sarah says 2 years ago, when Ian was 4, she was at Carla's house. Ian was crying. Carla put him in the spooky closet, the one under the stairs, and held the door shut while he screamed. Sarah tried to stop her, and Carla told her to mind her own business. That's why their friendship ended." I put my head in my hands. The closet. Ian used to be terrified of the dark. I thought it was just a phase. I didn't know my sister was locking him in the dark to train H. "I am." "She's a sadist," I whispered. "She enjoys it." "She's a predator who relies on silence," Rachel corrected. "And we are going to break the silence." "What do we do?" I asked. Rachel smiled, a sharp, shark-like grin. "We file the lawsuit, but we don't just sue for damages. We sue for full disclosure. We subpoena her communications. And we add Matthew as a co-defendant for negligence and aiding and abetting. He funded her, he covered for her, and he tried to blackmail you into silence." "He'll destroy us," I said. "He has an army of lawyers." "Let him try," Rachel said. "Because once we drop that video into the public record during the discovery phase, no amount of money will save them. We're going to nuke their reputation." The war wasn't just about a chocolate bar anymore. It was about years of silence, and I was ready to scream. The showdown didn't happen at a family barbecue or a holiday dinner. It happened in the sterile, glass-walled conference room of a high-end mediation firm downtown. It was 3 weeks after the incident. Matthew had hired a shark of his own, a man named Mr. Sterling who wore a suit that cost more than my car and smelled of expensive cologne and intimidation. They had called for a mediation session to resolve all outstanding familial and civil disputes before the criminal investigation proceeded further. I walked in with Rachel. On the other side of the long mahogany table sat Carla, looking fragile in a pastel cardigan, Matthew, looking impatient, and, to my heartbreak, our parents. They were there for moral support. For her. "Let's make this quick," Sterling began, not even looking at me. He slid a folder across the table. "My clients are prepared to offer a one-time payment of $10,000 to cover any medical expenses and pain and suffering. In exchange, Ms. Vance will sign a non-disclosure agreement, withdraw her cooperation with the police investigation to the extent possible, and issue a public retraction of her defamatory statements regarding the incident." Rachel didn't open the folder. She just leaned back in her chair, clicking her pen. "No." "Excuse me." Sterling blinked, his polished veneer cracking for a microsecond. "We aren't here for $10,000, Rachel said calmly. "And we certainly aren't here to sign an NDA. We are here to show you why you are going to settle for the full amount of our demand: $100,000 in damages, full tuition coverage for Ian until he is 18, and a permanent admission of guilt." Carla let out a sharp, incredulous laugh. "You're delusional, Jennifer. You really think you can extort us?" "Mom, Dad," I spoke for the first time, looking directly at my parents. They wouldn't meet my eyes. My mother was wringing her hands, my father was staring at the table. "Before we go any further, I need you to see something. You've heard Carla's version. You've heard she was scared and that Ian was violent. Now, I want you to see the reality." "We don't need to watch your doctored video," Matthew snapped. Sterling said. "Mr. Sterling hasn't seen the enhanced audio version yet," Rachel interrupted. "And I think, as the person funding this legal defense, you, Matthew, really need to see what you're paying for." Rachel connected her laptop to the large monitor on the wall. She pressed play. The room filled with the sound of a car door slamming. The video showed Ian, small and terrified, banging on the glass. Carla's voice, clear as a bell. "Stop whining. It's not that hot. Sit there and think about what you did." I watched my mother's face. She flinched as if she'd been slapped. Then came the coughing, the wet, desperate wheezing of a child's lungs closing up. "Ian, Auntie, I can't breathe." "Carla, you're faking it. You're just like your mother, always the victim. Shut up." My father's head snapped up. He looked at the screen, then at Carla. Carla was staring at the table, her face pale, her jaw set in a stubborn line. "He was faking," Carla whispered, though her voice wavered. He holds his breath." "Keep watching," I said softly. The video continued. Ian slumped over. The silence in the car was deafening. Then, the camera captured Carla walking past the hood of the car, talking on her phone. "Carla on phone? Yeah, he's in the car. Little Brad ate my chocolate. I'm letting him roast for a bit. Maybe next time he'll learn not to touch my things. No, the AC is off. It's a sauna in there. Hilarious, right?" The silence in the conference room was absolute. It was heavy, suffocating, and absolute. Matthew slowly turned his head to look at his wife. The color had drained from his face completely. "You told me. You told me the AC was on. You told me you were watching him the whole time." "I was," Carla hissed, grabbing his arm. "I was just venting to Sarah. I didn't mean it." "Speaking of Sarah," Rachel interjected, sliding a piece of paper across the table. "We have a sworn affidavit from Sarah detailing the closet incident from 2 years ago. And," she pulled out another document, "we have the veterinary records from the golden retriever incident." My mother let out a sob. She covered her mouth with her hand, tears streaming down her face. "Carla, you promised us that was an accident. You swore you loved that dog." "It was an accident," Carla shrieked, standing up. "Why is everyone attacking me? I am the victim here. She stole my car. She invaded my privacy with that illegal camera." "It's not illegal, Carla," Sterling said quietly, closing his file. He looked at Matthew. "We have a problem. If this goes to a jury, they will destroy her. And given that you, Matthew, funded the tuition cut as a retaliation tactic, they might come after you for conspiracy to inflict emotional distress." Matthew stood up. He looked at the screen, where the video had paused on Ian's unconscious, sweaty face. Then he looked at Carla, who was now crying, angry, ugly tears of a narcissist exposed. "You lied to me," Matthew said, his voice trembling with a mix of rage and realization. "I cut off a 6-year-old's education because you told me he kicked you. I threatened Jennifer because you said she attacked you." "I did it for us," Carla yelled, "to save money, to stop them from leeching off you." "You nearly killed my nephew over a $70 chocolate bar," Matthew roared, slamming his hand on the table so hard the water pitcher shook. "And you laughed about it." He turned to me. "Jennifer, turn it off." Rachel paused the video. Matthew adjusted his tie. He didn't look at Carla, he looked at his lawyer. "Sterling, give them whatever they want, full tuition, the settlement, all of it." "Matthew," Carla screamed, grabbing his lapel. "You can't, she's ruining me." Matthew peeled her fingers off his suit jacket as if she were something filthy. "No, Carla, you ruined yourself. I'm not going to jail for you. And I'm certainly not going to bankruptcy court for you." He looked at my parents. "You two knew, about the dog, about the closet." My father wept silently. My mother couldn't speak. Their silence was the answer. "I'm done," Matthew said. "Draft the settlement, Sterling, I'm leaving." He walked out of the room. Carla stood there, alone, surrounded by the wreckage of the lies she had built for decades. She looked at me, her eyes full of pure, unadulterated hatred. "I hope you're happy," she spat. "You finally won. You finally got everyone to look at you." "They aren't looking at me, Carla," I said, standing up and gathering my files. "They're finally looking at you." The aftermath of the mediation was swift and brutal. Matthew didn't just settle, he nuked the bridge. Within 48 hours, he had filed for divorce. It turns out, knowing your wife is capable of torturing a child and laughing about it is a deal-breaker, even for a man as absent as him. To protect his own reputation and assets, he cooperated fully with the police investigation, handing over texts where Carla admitted to exaggerating Ian's behavior to get him to cut the tuition. With Matthew's protection gone and the video evidence overwhelming, Carla's defense crumbled. The district attorney didn't go easy on her. They charged her with felony child endangerment and false imprisonment. Because she had no prior criminal record, thanks to my parents covering up the dog incident, she managed to avoid a long prison sentence. She took a plea deal, 3 years of probation, 500 hours of community service, mandatory anger management therapy, and a permanent criminal record that would bar her from ever working with children or vulnerable populations again. She also had to issue a public apology as part of the civil settlement. Seeing her read the statement on the court steps, forcing out the words, "I was negligent and cruel," was the final nail in the coffin of her social status. The influencer career was over. The friends vanished. She moved into a small apartment in the next town over, living off a meager alimony settlement that Matthew's lawyers had whittled down to the bare minimum. But the real victory wasn't seeing Carla fall. It was seeing my family heal. A week after the settlement was signed, my parents came to my apartment. They looked 10 years older. My dad held a box of Ian's favorite Lego sets. My mom held a Tupperware of soup. It was their way, awkward, silent gestures of love because the words were too hard. I let them in, but I didn't let them off the hook. We sat in the living room while Ian played in his room. "We're so sorry, Jen," my dad said, his voice cracking. We just wanted peace. We thought if we just kept Carla happy, everything would be okay. We didn't want to believe she was." "Evil," I supplied the word they were afraid of. "She's sick, Dad, and by protecting her from consequences all these years, you let her get sicker. You let her think she could hurt P. Apple without repercussions." "We know," Mom whispered. "We failed you, and we failed Ian. We will spend the rest of our lives trying to make it up to you." I looked at them. I still loved them. They were my parents, but the dynamic had shifted. I was no longer the little sister, the fixer, the doormat. I was the matriarch of my own life now. "I accept your apology," I said firmly. "But things are going to be different. You can see Ian, but never unsupervised. And if you ever pressure me to let Carla near him again, you will lose us both forever." "Never," Dad promised. "She is. She needs help we can't give her. We are done enabling her." That night, after they left, I went into Ian's room. He was building a spaceship, breathing easily, his chest rising and falling in a steady, healthy rhythm. The nebulizer sat on the shelf, unused for weeks. "Mommy," he asked, looking up, "is Auntie Carla still in timeout?" I sat on the edge of his bed and brushed the hair off his forehead. "Yes, baby. She's in a very long timeout. She won't be bothering us anymore." "Good," he said simply, snapping a blue brick onto a gray wing. "She's mean. I like it better just us." "I like it better just us too," I smiled. The settlement money hit my account the next day. It was enough to secure Ian's education through college and pay off my debts. But the money wasn't the point. The point was that I had found my voice. I had stood up to the golden child, the wealthy brother-in-law, and the parents who wanted silence. I had faced the fire and walked out carrying my son. I went back to work at the law firm the next Monday. Rachel greeted me with a high five and a fresh cup of coffee. "Ready for the next case?" she asked. I looked at the stack of files on my desk, other people, other mothers fighting for their lives. "Absolutely," I said. "Let's go get them."